And welcome back to the Hotline. We're discussing why Adrian is leaving Red Bull. Everything you need to know. Really interesting tidbit here before we get into the meat and potatoes, or the corner potatoes, if you so want to. So, the complainant, it says here, from Rob Myers on Twitter, the complainant in the Horner Red Bull case, as in the alleged victim, obviously Horner, innocent until proven guilty, is also Adrian Newey's PA, as in personal assistant, suggesting that this whole thing may well be personal. And there's a really interesting article on the race.com written by Mark Hughes that I really want to get into, because I find it, well, other than interesting, enlightening. It may have a few answers there. Once again, this is just conjecture, and we absolutely must remember this. So Mark Hughes is basically saying that if, as speculation has suggested, Newey wishes to leave Red Bull, what are the implications for this Formula One team? And he goes on to say that obviously to lose the services of someone of Adrian Newey's stature, who may well be one of the greatest mind, if not the greatest mind, in motorsport history, certainly in F1 history, anyone would love to have Adrian Newey, and he's suggesting that it is going to have an effect. But furthermore, there are a whole bunch, he's saying, of exceptionally talented engineers working in that Red Bull technical department, and should Newey leave, their motivation is, we need to prove a point. And he suggested that is this the case of Adrian Newey absolutely overshadowing everyone in the technical department? And it says it's not as if Newey would be departing because of general malaise within the team either. He says this is a very personal issue based around the Christian Horner controversy regarding the employee who served as a PA to both Horner and Adrian Newey. Now, key insiders insist the team morale is very high, that everything is being focused on to what is happening on the track. But he says longer term, Newey departing would lose the team the most valuable personal resource it has. If in addition he joined a rival, he said that damage may well be doubled. Say, for example, he goes to Ferrari. Now, the power struggle at the wider Red Bull levels organisation have been brought, he's saying, into tighter focus by this whole Christian Horner controversy. And this has created such a volatile situation that he's saying we can take nothing as read. It's not impossible to imagine, if you will, a situation where the threat of a Newey departure could put Christian Horner's role at a renewed risk should the Austrian management decide to act. For example, does that put Horner in a weaker position? Are they going to point fingers and say, Christian Horner, you are the reason Adrian Newey has gone? Especially if this female is allegedly the PA. Now, she got suspended, as we know, for supposedly being economic with the truth. Allegedly, again, we're going to be using that word a lot. And if that's the case, fine. But then you have to wonder if Adrian Newey is leaving, and if it is personal, as suggested by Mark Hughes, who may well not be the only one, does Newey know more than we do? So, where the power ultimately lies in this ongoing corporate battle is extremely difficult to pinpoint when the whole ownership structure is under discussion. Now, Newey's plans may very well have a profound effect on how this all plays out, as we've just suggested. And the article says, but would Newey be happy at a post-Horner Red Bull with an Austrian-appointed nominee running the team? He suggests, might it be a case of can't be with you, can't be without you for Adrian? Perhaps he'd prefer just to get out regardless, maybe retire. And there are very specific personal reasons for one man. What we can say, Hughes says, is that the political heft of someone of Newey's stature potentially leaving is immense and could have a further destabilising effect. It's going to be offensive for someone, I can assure you. But as for Newey's plans beyond leaving the team, there's a natural assumption that he may well make a move to Aston Martin and or Ferrari or even Mercedes. But that's not something we can assume, obviously, at this point. That is only rumours. Ferrari potentially being the strongest suggestion, because if Peter Windsor, and I've no doubt not to believe that he certainly thinks this, Newey was offered by Aston Martin, saying, hey, here's almost a blank check, please come and join us. And Newey has reportedly said no to Aston Martin, this big money offer. But that doesn't mean that Adrian Newey actually has a place to go. But everything we are hearing says that his wish to leave Red Bull is based on his personal opinion. And it's not inconceivable, though, that he simply retires, which would mean there would be no legal battles regarding his completing his contract, which runs out until the end of 2025. Now, at Formula One management level, there is sure to be a desire to take Newey's skills, for example, to Ferrari, in the hope of levelling that playing field. But current boss Stefano Domenicali is not as proactive in trying to ease such moves as Bernie Eccleston certainly was. And let's be thinking about Max Verstappen. He's caught now in the middle of a further controversy, while all he's trying to do is win races and titles and, let's be fair, break records. But any departure of Newey surely is going to raise his eyebrow of where his future may lie. He has already suggested the future may not be at Red Bull, and that's before 2028. But then now he said he's happy at the team. But with Adrian Newey leaving, the new rules coming in 2026, could that change? Would he follow him? Would he decide to go somewhere else? The fallout in Dietrich Mateschitz passing is still happening, and it's shaking the team, Hughes says, to its foundations. The loss of Newey will surely not help at all. And also, PlanetF1.com are suggesting that Newey may well take a sabbatical. And they've mentioned, obviously, from Thursday, there have been all these rumours, and Red Bull are reportedly not aware of Newey joining a team. Yes, PlanetF1.com has made its own inquiries in the light of all these reports and come away with what they've suggested is a particularly muddy picture in what the state of play is. A Red Bull spokesman has said Adrian is contracted until at least the end of 2025, and we are unaware of him joining another team. But they're saying, and I completely agree with them, this statement lays out two separate facts without answering the question whether or not he's staying at the team. Yes, they've confirmed what we already know. Adrian Newey is under contract for 2025, and officially no team has signed him after, should he leave Red Bull. So yeah, they are telling the truth, but they're not really saying much, so to speak. But sources within the Red Bull team have told PlanetF1.com that there are no preparations being made for a Newey departure, and that the British engineer has not come forward to tell anyone he plans on leaving. But without Newey stating otherwise, the possibility of Red Bull and Newey parting ways, it does remain. It's being reported on. How can such a scenario happen, they question? Well, with a valid contract in place following his extension with the Milton Keynes squad, Newey's off limits until at least the end of 2025. But we forget about gardening leave, and Newey's understood to have a year's gardening leave as a requirement on his contract following its conclusion, because he's been there now for nearly two decades, meaning the earliest he could theoretically join, people have suggested, is 2027, a year after those new rules are in place. But according to Automotor and Sports' initial report, Newey is said to believe that he could join another team as early as 2025. This could be, in theory, possible if Red Bull was willing to play ball with Newey in allowing him to leave for a competitor, for example, prior to his contract ending, and if he was already, or very near to, starting a short 6-month gardening leave instead, if he were to go. But as it stands, they're saying Newey's going to be in attendance at the Miami Grand Prix, suggesting that such a big gardening leave, if it was going to happen, hasn't even started yet. And the designer was also on the ground at the Japanese Grand Prix, but he did stay home for Australia and China. And according to other reports, Newey is said to have grown unhappy with the internal politics, and that's what PlanetF1.com is reporting. And in relation to Adrian Newey and politics, let me make this. He was at Williams. Why did he leave Williams? Well, one of the reasons was initially he wasn't happy with the way Nigel Mansell was treated. The 92 champion kicked out for Alain Prost. And then Newey was like, okay. He went up to Patrick and Frank Williams, and he said, I want more of a say in who our drivers are. They supposedly said yes. And then the Damon Hill thing happened. It's believed that Williams made the decision to sack Damon Hill in 95, kind of announced it in 96, in replace of Frentzen, which may have been a mistake in hindsight. But then one thing I believe is for certain, Adrian Newey said he wasn't consulted on that at all and was fairly surprised. And they did exactly what they did to Damon Hill as what they did to Mansell, which Adrian Newey thought was wrong. This guy doesn't really like politics. And so he went to McLaren. So McLaren, albeit, I wouldn't suggest it's that political, but certainly Ron Dennis, some have suggested, is not as successful as he is. He may not be the easiest guy to work for. Adrian Newey reportedly changed the colour of his walls, painted them a different colour, which one wasn't a particular fan of. But I think one of the big reasons why Adrian left McLaren was he initially signed for Jaguar for a bit. Ron told him to convinced Adrian, to undo it, and then Adrian was like, okay. And then he came back to McLaren, confirmed his future with McLaren. But then the damage had already been done, and Ron Dennis then set up some matrix system. So in his eyes, the team is, the design team at the very least is not just one man. There are many people. So should Adrian Newey leave, there still would be the people there to support McLaren in designing and making their car. I completely understand that. Ultimately, Adrian Newey was convinced in 2005 by David Coulthard and Christian Horner to leave Red Bull, which he did. And nearly 2 decades on, here we are in potentially a similar situation where with this whole PA thing. If it is true, once again, Horner completely denies these allegations. So once again, innocent until proven guilty. But as we said, this is definitely not the end of it. We are going to hear more. There is an appeal. The FIA have been spoken to. It's going to drag on, sadly. But moving on, Hamilton also hints at how he feels about a certain Adrian Newey, departure from Red Bull and potentially going to Ferrari. Hamilton said, I think my move has shown that anything's possible and it's going to be really interesting in the next 6 months or so. He went on saying that having worked within the team, I know Adrian gets all the praise for everybody's work. I know he's a huge part of it, of course, but I know so many engineers in the background that are a huge part of developing a team and the car, and it's not just down to one person. So it's not my decision. I'm competing against him at the moment, but interestingly, he says, I can't talk about next year so far just yet. Does Lewis Hamilton know something we don't? He potentially knew that Mercedes wasn't going to be a great car. He wasn't happy with his contract, but going to Ferrari, was Hamilton told that they're going to do everything they can to lure Adrian Newey to Ferrari? Please join us, Lewis. And if Adrian Newey does go to Ferrari, you really have to feel sorry for Carlos Sainz, who's leaving Ferrari, potentially a championship-winning team. But there we go. I guess we'll find out more on that later. Anyway, if you made it to the end, please send us a like, send us a subscribe, comment below, let us know what you think. We will speak to you soon. This has been the Hot Lap. Stay tuned here for all your motorsport news and games and more news. Thank you very much.